on tonight. We're so excited to have you part of our inaugural Hope
Yeah,
Nights, Linda,
yeah.
our online 3-day conference. So we're just going to give it a minute to allow some people to jump in and join us tonight. We're really excited about the next 3 nights and what we believe that God's going to do just through this time that we have together.
Yeah,
Linda, so it's going to be good. So welcome aboard as you jump on tonight.
So glad you guys are here tonight. So good to see everybody here. We've been asked the question, why Hope Nights? Why are we doing Hope Nights? Well, at this period of time during this confinement, and some of us would call it quarantine, we wanted to give you all a renewed and a refreshed hope. Something that would give you some handles, something that would just inspire you as we're going through this time together. And listen, we're going through it together, so we know that all of you are as well. And what we've done is we've actually found some of the most amazing pastors from across the country who are joining us tonight and Wednesday night and Thursday night. And we just wanted for you to hear from them, because they've gone through some things, and they are able to just give us some handles and some good practical information, as well as spiritual things that's going to help us with that renewed and that refreshed hope.
That's right.
And a little bit about us. Why don't you tell us a little bit about
and real quick, as you're getting on, we're going to ask you, would you please go ahead and share this? We want to get this in as many people's hands as possible, that whomever you know that could use a little hope during this time, that you just take a minute right now and just kind of hit your share button. If you need to tag some people, please do that. And again, thank you so much for taking part out of your night to be with us tonight. And for those of you that don't know, again, this is through the Experience Church page, but there's many people that are going to be logging on that maybe don't know anything about the Experience Church or Linda and I, and we are the pastors of the Experience Church. We've been doing ministry together, family affair, Linda, for 20 years. Actually, we planted the Experience Church 10 years ago. This is our 10-year anniversary, and God has just done, this month. And we had a big party planned that we're postponing until we can get back. But God has just done some amazing things in 10 years right here in the Ohio Valley. We're in a tiny little town called Bridgeport, Ohio. But through the grace of God, we've managed to grow our church and reach thousands and thousands of people with the message of hope of Jesus. And, our mission statement is, it's a place, the Experience Church exists for people to find hope, follow Jesus, and discover purpose. So we hope that you'll find hope during these next 3 nights of hope. And Linda, we've got some great people lined up over these next couple days, man. Thursday night, which is the final night, we're going to have dear friends of ours, really mentors of ours. We're going to have pastors Ed and Lisa Young from the Great Fellowship Church, one of the most influential creative churches on the planet. That's going to be a lot of fun, so don't miss that. And then tomorrow night, Linda, we've got a double header.
We sure do.
Who do we have?
Really good friends of ours. Really good friends. Pastor Lonnie and Ruth Snell from New Life Chapel near Cincinnati, Ohio. I can't wait for you guys to hear from them, as well as Pastor Brian and Danielle Sanders from Elevate Church near Morton, Illinois. And I want to tell you, they're going to bring some amazing information for you guys, and they're going to just bring the goods, right?
It's going to be great. And our church, they've spoke at our church before.
Right.
So you're very familiar with most of them. But tonight we've got some really special guests that I'm super excited about. And Linda, I'm going to let you introduce them, because you've been connected to Pastor Jud and Lori through an organization that you're part of.
That's right.
But man, this church, the church that they lead, man, Linda, let's talk a little bit about who they are in their church.
I just want to read something about them, if I could, real quick. Pastor Jud and Lori Wilhite, they are pastors at Central Church in Las Vegas. And the thing that I love about what they say in their bio is this: they love watching God change Sin City into Grace City.
Man, it's good.
Currently, Central Church has 27 locations, reaching about 40,000 people nationally and internationally, including 12 locations inside of prisons all around the country. That's so amazing. Pastor Jud is the author of Uncaged and Pursued, 2 amazing books. And Lori is the founder of Leading and Loving It, which is an organization for pastors' wives and ministry leaders all across the world, actually. And we meet once a year at Vegas, Central Church. Yes. And she's also the author of Rise Up and My Name is Victorious. And I want to add this too. They have 2 hilarious and amazing kids, Emma and Ethan. So it is our honor tonight to welcome our special guests, Jud and Lori Wilhite. Now, what we want you to do is we just want you to give them some love on social media right now and let them know how much you love them being here with us. Welcome, you guys.
Thank you so much. So good to be with you guys. We're honored. We're thrilled.
Yeah. You're hired as our PR people to read that every time we go.
Yes.
Well, we're so excited. Good. And hey, listen, while you're viewing this tonight, listen, the hearts are the new amen.
Yep.
Okay, so if you want to say amen, like just hit that heart button right there on the Facebook Live page. We want you to be engaged and comment as we start the discussion. And guys, Vegas, I want to say this real quick. Linda and I actually spent our honeymoon in Vegas.
Yes, we did.
Back in the day.
Oh, I didn't know that.
30 years ago.
But it was old school Vegas. Yeah. We actually stayed. Check this out. It was at the Sands. And I don't even know.
The
dunes. Was it the dunes?
One-story dunes.
Yeah, but it's gone now, I think, right?
Yeah.
Gone.
Yeah.
Well, our whole history went up in smoke.
I could do like a honeymoon round 2, I think.
Yes.
I'm telling you.
There you go.
We'd love to do it, but I'll never.
Yes.
We took on the last night, we took a certain amount of money. I forget what we took, like $100 back in the day. And we said, okay, this is money we're going to put in machines, $100. We were down to our last $10. It was our final night.
Yeah.
We went in Caesar's Palace. I stuck $1 in a machine. We won $500 at the time. That was $1 million. I told Linda, I said, we're cashing out. We're going to the room. It's over. We win.
That's right.
That's great.
So that's our Vegas story.
It was a good week for us.
We had a great time.
It was so fun.
We had a great time. So let's get right into it with you guys. And again, thanks so much for being here. I think Linda just talked about your church, and man, the influence that your church has is incredible. And the scope and the reach that you have is amazing, that God's just really blessed your church. So could you just kind of lead us into how did you get there? What's happened in a short period of time since you've been there? And how did that whole thing kind of unpack so our church can get kind of a glimpse into who you guys are and how it started?
Yeah, so we didn't start Central. We went there 17 years ago, which is crazy. Lori was 6 months pregnant with
No. See, only a man would say 8 months pregnant, y'all, and those pregnant. 2 months matter.
Just a few months. And I moved her across the desert, and it was 117 degrees, and I remember she was very pregnant.
It was very.
She's thinking, what have you done to me? What have I done? Right?
Why are we here?
That's right. So we absolutely love Vegas, love our church family, and just feel really privileged to get to be in this kind of crazy city that most people don't realize is anything more than a vacation spot. But there's really wonderful people here and a really beautiful community, and a lot of hurting people, but it just means a lot of people that need some hope, and we're excited to get to share it with them.
Yeah, that's right. Vegas is just like everywhere else, except for when it's not. But it mostly is, except you'll have a guy out washing his car at 4 a.m. because he just got off work, So there's some weird things to it for sure. But people don't realize there's a couple million people in the Vegas Valley that they may interface with the Las Vegas Strip for work, but they have normal lives.
Yeah. And you guys at your church, your slogan, your tagline is, "It's okay not to be okay."
It's okay. Yeah, it's okay to not be okay. That's our sort of big thing. I had a friend of mine years ago, gosh, 15, 16 years ago, I was having lunch with him, and he was telling me about this message he did. He's a pastor up in Portland, and he said he had shared in his message, it's okay to not be okay. And I just stopped him. I said, I'd never heard that before. I said, that's really good. Do you mind if I use that? He goes, no, I'll go for it. He came to our church a few years later. It's all over the building. It's on the walls. He's like, man, you took that to a whole new level. I said, yeah, and I gave you no credit, bro. No credit at all. Yeah.
As pastors, we say it long enough, we believe it's ours. If you just say it over and over, you believe it's ours.
That's right. But we really believe that. We really believe that, it's okay to hurt. It's okay to be a mess. It's okay to, the worst thing you can do is lie about where you're at, right? The healthiest thing you can do is just be honest about it. And that's where we all find grace and healing and for all of us. So
really, at the end of the day, our church's hearts are so similar.
Yes.
Your church is the perfect place for people. We're the place where it's okay to be okay, and just have a real shared heart for helping people come to Jesus, to know him, and to start that journey with him in their lives. It's pretty awesome.
I love it.
And where we are right now, it's okay to not be okay. I feel like that's the essence of where we are right now in the season that we're in, that we have to almost accept the fact that we're not okay right now all the time. And we're trying to learn how to manage through that. And, hence why we're doing Hope Nights and what that looks like for us. And I know that you guys have been through so much in your church and through so many seasons and situations. I know we were talking about this today that, was in 2017 that you guys had a situation where you had to deal with a mass tragedy that happened. Could you tell us a little bit about that and what that looked like? Because I feel like it's very similar to where we are right now as on the earth, basically, like all over, not just in one city, everywhere.
Yeah, I feel like we've had a front row seat to navigating through a few different challenges. The Great Recession, Vegas was one of the key epicenters for that, and that was a solid 8-year journey. That was a long journey. And then we had a couple years ago the Vegas mass shooting, and so we walked through that with our church family, and now here we are again. Now all of us navigating crisis and uncertain times. Yeah,
that shooting was in some ways a little similar. Like we went to bed in a kind of a normal situation and woke up to an absolute, like our lives in our church and our city had been completely turned upside down. And I certainly have felt that in the last few weeks that, we woke up one day and everything just looked different. And in that scenario, we had, I think I read even recently that like 5,000 people injured, 58 people killed. It was a huge thing that we had to navigate as a church and as a city. And you look around now and that is just exponential, right, worldwide. But it takes almost the same like triage mentality as a church family as you go out and try to minister to your city and to your people and to provide hope. We had people who were scared then. We have people who are scared now. People were wounded then who their hearts are wounded now. And so in some ways, there are definitely some similarities as we navigate this season now.
The one thing I'd say about all of it that I think we're seeing right now, I know that you guys are seeing that at Experience Church, and I think we're just, it's of God, which is in these crises, he often moves so powerfully we just learn so much more in the valley than the mountain.
Yes.
And hang out on the mountain, right? But the truth is 10 minutes in the valley and you grow so much more than years in comfort of the mountain, right? So
true.
We're in the valley now, but this is where God can do his greatest work in our lives if we'll allow him to. We can grow more here than anywhere else.
Jud said, I'm sorry, go ahead.
No, go ahead, Lori.
Jud said, the night of our shooting here, when we had a big church service, and he said, I remember standing up in front of our people, some of whom were in wheelchairs who had gotten out of the hospital that day. And he said, we will get through this one way. We will get through it together. And it's the same thing that we're saying to our church family now. We will get through this and we will get through it together. So the church family is so vital in times like this. The unity and the love and the togetherness is what will help us get through.
It's great. I think through these times, like what I'm asking myself and we're asking our church is what's God showing us through this time? Like, what are we learning? Because you can go through it, but I think there's an opportunity to grow through it. That's and right. The situation's not good, but God works out all things for good, even in the midst of the situation. So could you take a minute, Jud, and just talk a little bit about like, what were the words? Where was your heart as you're leading? Because people are looking to you and like, it's difficult as pastors, but we have got to kind of put our big boy pants on, big girl pants on, and rise above. So what was the word that you spoke to your church that might be a great word for our church as we're trying to manage this unknown place that we've never been in before?
Yeah, I think we've been in it 6 weeks now. And so let me just, as I'm thinking back, one thing that's really convicted me and stuck with me is the story of Jesus calming the storm. And he's out on the water with his disciples, and there's a crazy storm, and they find him asleep, that's just an amazing thing right there. Like, hey, maybe I should put this together that if Jesus isn't worried, I shouldn't be worried, right? But instead, they're all panicking, and they ask him this question that I think is very real for us right now. They said, do you not care if we die? And do you care if we die? And Jesus' response to them is it's just kind of been stuck in my heart. It's stretching me every day, right? His response is, where is your faith? Why do you have such little faith?
Yeah.
And then he goes out on the front of the ship and says, peace, be still, and he really calms the storm. I think what I've been living with and what I've been sharing with our church is the day will eventually come. Maybe a few months, maybe a few years, none of us know, right? The day will come when we're in calm waters again.
Yeah.
And when we look back on this season of our lives, will they be the kinds of seasons Jesus would say to us, where was your faith?
Wow.
Where was your faith in the midst of the storm? Because if my faith doesn't sustain me in the midst of the storm, then what kind of faith is it, right? Like, what's the point of having a faith that doesn't help you when the water's crazy and everything's unknown and there's all kinds of uncertainty? So just personally, that's what I've shared that message with our church, but I think just personally, that's what's continued to motivate me and challenge me personally. Like, Jud, you of little faith, right? Where is your faith in the midst of the storm?
Well,
it's so good.
I told our church too, everybody said this caught us off guard. In one respect it did, but let's remember Jesus said, hey, in this world, there'll be many trials. There'll be many troubles. Yeah. So he kind of sets it up like, hey, I'm not just here when everything's going great in your life. He said, in this world, get ready. You're going to go through some stuff. But then he said, but take heart or have courage because he's overcome the world. And I just kind of insert the COVID crisis. He's overcome the COVID crisis. He's that name's above all names, including that. But I think the challenge is for so many of us, including me at times, is there are times that we like lean over and there are times that we lean in. And I think, man, this is a critical time for the church to lean in. Like, we can't be leaning over because people are looking at us. And I don't know about you, and you guys can speak into this. I've had more people reach out to me that were far from God prior to this that are saying, hey, Pastor, I don't know I don't know if I'm good. Like, can we talk about that? Because things are getting a little crazy. And I just think it's an important time for the church really to practice 2 Corinthians 5:20. And what it says is, like, we are Christ representatives. Through us, God is calling them. Like, how are we managing this? And we've got to make sure that we're not like falling apart. This is based on what you said. Our faith is holding us together during these times. Yeah,
that's right. I think that's a great word and powerful. And it's okay. And I know you guys agree with this. We have to recognize that we're all going through, there's a lot of ways you could categorize it, but one way is the grief process, right? We're going through our own grief process. Yeah. We're going to go through loss and anger and hurt and, all of it, and denial. I think a lot of us have been in denial for a while, right? Like, this isn't it's the flu, y'all. It's not even the flu. Everybody, right? Like all the things, right? And then it just, you hear more and more stories and you start assessing. I just did my first funeral this last week for a member of our church family who passed away from COVID. And so, the denial starts to break down. And so we hit this at kind of different levels and different spaces, and I think we go through it differently. Like, in the initial days, it was just total uncertainty, right? The complete uncertainty. Now I feel like it's slightly different. It's like, how do I live in what could be the new normal? Yeah. And how long does that go? And what does that look like? Yeah. Just so we open back up, but we're not opening up like we did in February, right? From everything we hear and see. So I feel like that's another part of that grief process. Everybody's processing together, right? What does that mean for my business? What does it mean for my organization? I've got a restaurant business. What does it mean for that? Or I'm in retail. What does it mean for that? So yes.
And all of us, I think, probably have a different timeline of getting our spiritual footing. Like Jud, I feel like got his spiritual footing quickly. I was in a fetal position in the corner for the first probably 10 days. And so because I couldn't get back on my feet, spiritually speaking.
I'll tell you about my fetal position moment as well, but go ahead, Lori.
But that process for everybody is a little different, and we have to have grace with each other, whether that be as a couple or with our kids or with our friends, because everybody's kind of at a different space of getting back on their spiritual feet. In regards to this, we have to have a little patience and a little grace with each other as we figure it out.
Yeah, that's good. So I was with a group of pastors in my home the week before in Nevada. Everything shut down, right? So, the dominoes are starting to fall. All these people have traveled from around the country. We're all sitting in my living room, and all of these pastors and leaders are young, and so they're almost excited. They're like, this is going to be new opportunities. We're going to, they're seeing the positive so fast. And I'm just sitting there. I realize experience is a blessing. We always talk about how experience is a blessing, but experience is also a burden. It's also a burden, because when you've led through some things and you start seeing those dominoes fall, you're like, oh man. So I did have a moment when all these younger leaders were around me, and so fast they got to like, we're going to get through this. God's got this. And I'm just sitting there in silence, emotionally, basically sucking my thumb in the corner thinking, rocking back and forth. This is going to be hard. This is going to be so hard. It's like, I've done this. Yeah.
Exactly.
That's the real deal. That's the truth.
Right.
And none of this is easy. And I don't care. You can't prepare for this kind of pain. You just can't do it. And you try to be, the Bible in season, out of season, but it's so difficult, Linda, to always be ready. I mean, it's hard.
I think there's a sense of uncertainty that we just don't know. And you said it earlier about having that faith. And I think sometimes in uncertainty, we begin to lose our confidence in who God has made us to be and who we are physically. And I want to kind of lead that into the next question. And Lori, I want to ask you about this because you wrote a book called My Name is Victorious. And what I'm seeing right now, and it's about confidence and walking in God's confidence and being confident. And I'm seeing so many people now who reach out to me and say, you know what? I used to be a teacher, but now I'm not teaching anyone. I used to be this, but I'm not that anymore. And their confidence they're finding was placed in what their identity was in the physical. And I'm just wondering how we help people to understand through this, that while that may have been their confidence, they can still have a confidence in who God's made them to be. And I know I know your book is alluding to this. In fact, it's not just alluding to it. That's what the book is. Can you speak into that a little bit? How that looks for people right now, like to give them a little bit of hope in what they might be feeling right now about not having that confidence in who they used to be.
Well, so many of us carry around names that we are called or that we kind of identify with. A lot of them are good, like teacher or mom or spouse or whatever. And then some of them are really tragic. They're like, ugly or insecure or hurting or whatever. And whatever those names are that we carry around, I think God offers us the chance to trade those names in for something so much better. And really that book is set out of Revelation. There's a verse in Revelation that God talks about giving us a new name on a white stone, and the white stone was a symbol of victory. And what God is saying is, whatever that old thing was, whether it was good or whether it was bad, I'm giving you something so much better, because you're a victor, you're a conqueror, you're an overcomer. And thank God it isn't based in us, it's based in him and what he has done and who he is. And when we can shift our focus off of ourselves in both the good and the bad, and instead put it on Jesus and who he is, that is what can empower us to become overcomers and conquerors and victorious in our lives on a daily basis. But I think for sure, so many people I mean, shoot, so many moms out there, parents have now become your teacher, and it wasn't a role you ever wanted. It is not the name you want.
Oh,
You'd
man.
like to hire is like, can I find a substitute teacher tomorrow? Like,
Can I carry the one? That's what I'm saying. Can I carry the one?
And so, but whatever that is, there is a name that is so much greater that God offers for us, and He will help us and empower us no matter what we're going through to find that victory in the midst of it.
I love that. You said a couple of things there. Victorious, which is the name of your book, but you can even say that, I am victorious. I'm strong. I'm able. I'm capable. I'm all of these things as we're going through this. But you also said something else, which Jud, you alluded to, the new normal. There's something about this new normal that we keep referring to that we're going to be walking in. Once we're out of this, it will be a new normal.
Yes.
I mean, our new normal already is something that we can't even describe, but what that new normal is going to look like, we're not really sure about. So I think as we're walking into that, it's important for anybody who's watching out there to remind yourself that it's okay to have a new normal. When I went through my heart procedure last year, my new normal was I can't walk the same way I did before. I can't, I have to take medication in a different way. My new normal was different.
Shoot, you had to stop drinking caffeine.
Oh,
that's like, caffeine, that's like,
it's still awful.
changing.
I still am fighting against that. Right. I'm still asking God about that one. But it's okay to have a new normal. It's okay to be operating differently. And I think if we can transition into that and begin to look at our new normal as it will be okay, we will be able to adapt. I think there's something strengthening about that we don't have to go back to the way it was in order for us to be able to walk the way we need to walk and be who we need to be and manage our families and our workplaces. Because man, shoot, when we go back to work, the workplace is going to look different. And I think there's a sense of fear with that. What do you guys think about that? I mean, there's a sense of fear and apprehension and anxiety about what's going to happen.
Yeah, I think that's just a normal part of it. I definitely sense there's all of those things, but this is an opportunity to think on the positive side of all of this. Never before in my lifetime have I faced a season where I was called on in such a focused way to embrace and follow Jesus' words. Don't worry about tomorrow. Tomorrow has enough worries on its own. Just live the day. And I'm a recovery guy, but I say to myself every day, one day at a time.
Wow.
If you start living in what life's like at work in 3 months, I mean, none of us fully know yet, what that's going to be. But one day at a time. What I can tell you based on the promises of God is that we will get through this.
Yeah.
Yes.
It may not be okay in this, acceptance is all about recognizing it is what it is. I may not like it, right? It is what it is. I finally get to acceptance. It doesn't mean it was great. It may mean it was awful, but I accept that it is what it is. But God will see His people through in this life or the next. He will walk with us in the midst of this. Nothing can separate us from His love. And what struck me about this famous passage in the Bible in Romans 8 that says, we're more than conquerors. And in the context of that, it says, what shall separate us from the love of Christ? And it says, will persecution or hardship or trouble, will danger or sword or nakedness, vulnerability, all of these. And you could just put the coronavirus in there. You could put the new normal in there, right? Paul isn't saying we're more than conquerors because we don't face those things. He's saying more than conquerors because we do face those things. And Jesus sees us through, and nothing could separate us from His love. So that's just what I'm hanging on to, even in the church world, right? Guys, Experience Church, Central Church, every church. What we do and what we did is the exact opposite of social distancing at every level, as far as gathering, church, services, groups, so we're all right there in it with business leaders and corporate leaders, and we're all walking the same road of okay, what does this look like? But what I feel so much strength and confidence in is that in the new normal, whatever it shakes out as, we will be okay. And I saw it in the Great Recession. When the Great Recession happened, Vegas was like an epicenter for that. And so at one point we had 70% of our city were underwater on their home mortgages, most of them by 50%.
Wow.
If you can imagine, you're like 70%. It was unbelievable, right? And in the food lines, we had a food pantry. It was pretty small back then at the time. But in the food lines, I would walk the food lines, and we started having people showing up surrounding our building to get food on the daily basis. And these were church members. These were former construction workers and electricians and people that had been laid off. These were not like indigent, homeless people. I used to just go back to my office and cry, because I know these families, I know these people, and their whole world had been flipped upside down. I can remember months, a period of several months where we didn't get a single piece of mail. Now just think about that, like no advertising, no catalogs, no promotion. That's all I get now. I just came back from the mailbox. The mail's still running, man. It's all just junk, right? But we didn't get a single piece of mail unless it was a bill, right? Like everything else was out the window. I can remember going through the season where it had been years since I saw a new car drive down our street. And this new car drove down the street, and I was standing out front, and my neighbor was standing out front. And we both just looked at each other with our mouths open. It was like, it wasn't a fancy, it was like a Toyota, but it was new. And we're all like, that dude's driving a new car, like, wow. And so I know this sounds like crazy, but I just look back to that. I'm like, we lived through something. And what I can tell you is we were okay. Yeah. God saw us through it, and I look back now, and this is what I'm reminding myself now. What did I want to say to myself back then? It would take it one day at a time. Don't worry. This too will pass. It doesn't fix anything. It doesn't help anything. Trust God and look for opportunities and believe that God is going to move in the midst of it. And he will. Someday this will be a memory. Someday.
And we're all faced with an option with all this on how we're going to view things. We went for a walk last week, and as we would pass people and we would get out in the street to walk around them and trying to give them space, I remember thinking, I'd be so glad when we're not scared of each other. Oh, when we can just go for a walk and we're just not scared of each other. Yeah. And then after we passed about our 10th kind of sets of people, it struck me that yes, we're walking away from each other, but every single time we're talking to each other. How are you guys doing? Are you staying safe? Are you okay? And I thought, you know what? We didn't used to check on each other when we walked next to each other.
Vegas people don't even wave at you. You can give a good Southern wave, right? And they all
over. No. So while there are a lot of sad things that we could focus on, there are also a lot of opportunities. Yeah. And we have the opportunity that even 6 feet away to check on people that we don't know. I had a long visit with our neighbors that I don't know, we don't know our neighbors in Las Vegas. You probably know yours, where you guys live, but I had never seen them. We had a nice chat, but I was like, we wouldn't have done that a few months ago. And it's a beautiful opportunity. And there's so much opportunity for the church family, for your church family and our church family. When we were in that recession, it was a lot of heartache, but there were a lot of people who met Jesus in the middle of their heartache. And we're faced with a similar time of, man, there are opportunities for people to, in the midst of their fear and their heartache and heartbreak, to meet Jesus. It's a great opportunity. And so it's trying to just balance that out and focus on the right things. And
let me just have a word. May just take a moment here to the Experienced Church family. Mm-hmm. You guys have an incredible faith community. You have an amazing leadership. Your pastors, Tim and Linda, incredible people. If you are not investing and inviting in your relationships right now to Experience Church Online, if you're not reaching out to family members, even that uncle who's an alcoholic who could care less about anything or anybody, let me tell you something. Everybody's scared right now. So it's an opportunity. Yeah. Your call, what God has placed on your life right now, is just the opportunity to leverage your relationships. You've got this amazing faith community, these amazing leaders. Christ is moving in huge ways online, through their online campus, through their groups, through their online connections that are happening. You could bring real hope. This could be a valley that defines your friends and family's lives for generations to come.
Right.
So this is an opportunity, and it's as simple as a screenshot and an invite on Facebook, or a screenshot and an invite on your phone. It's a small thing. It's never been easier, and you will have never looked less crazy than you would right now for inviting a friend. Hey, come here, man.
So
Come to Experience Church. Come check this out. You don't even have to leave your house, right?
You don't even have to live in the same part of the country, no
you
matter
don't
where
have to,
you
you
are.
don't have to take a shower. You know, like just
What could
watch.
be better than that?
You know, that's a great word, Pastor Jud, because the thing that we always are kind of reiterating in our church, and I have this phrase, and I remind our church, I said, your invitation can lead to a conversation that will cause transformation and change eternal destination through one invitation, man. And you just think, well, they're not going to come. We don't know if they're going to come.
Yeah.
I mean, I know how jacked up I was back in the day. And I mean, I was far from God. And like I said, I lived through the 80s, what I remember, the greatest decade of all time, and what I remember of them. But somebody had the wherewithal that cared enough. And I ended up in a church far different than the church that we have.
Yeah.
But still, the gospel is powerful. And if the gospel is preached, man, that's all we have to do. Put them in a position to hear it. We can't save anyone. We can put people in a position where they can hear it clearly and compellingly, where they go, man, that's me. That's my life, man. I've got stuff broken on my inside that needs put back together. And it seems like this Jesus, who is a builder, can build something new in my life. And I can experience life for the first time. And if you would, Jud, just for a moment, because I know you talk about part of your testimony is where you've been and why you're so passionate about reaching people that are a little, like most of us, a little jacked up. And because I know our church, when you put the perfect place for imperfect people on the door, people have permission to come in however they are. Whether they're in the middle of a mess, broken, far from God, doesn't matter. So could you just talk a little bit about like where you came from and your passion now for seeing people healed and whole?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I came from a great family, loving family, church-going family, but I was just, I don't have anybody to blame for my stupidity and my mistakes but myself. My circumstances, my parents, I tried for years, but there's really nothing there. I just, I started to run around with an older group of friends when I was a teenager and got caught up in a whole lot of things and basically ended up in a 4-year drug addiction, which kind of defined things for me in my life. I feel like when you're on the road of serious addiction, there's only like 4 destinations on that road. You know, you're either going to die or you're going to go to jail or you're going to go crazy or you're going to get help. Like those are the only 4 stops on that road if it's serious, you know, and that's definitely where I was. I knew I was coming up to that crossroads and wasn't sure what to do. And I remember finally I just got to a place. I had overdosed and there's this whole backstory, but I got to a place where I knew I was at that crossroads, like something had to change, and I knew I needed help, but I knew I couldn't do it on my own. And I got on my knees. I asked God for help. You know, I prayed that he would help me. And then that next weekend, I walked through the doors of a church for the very first time on my own. I know now that God called me there and led me there and was working behind the scenes, but from the point of view of myself, I walked through on my own terms. Not because my parents went to church, but because I needed help. And I always say the church community, I found my way to a little group of friends in that church community that prayed for me and walked with me. And they actually didn't know anything about addiction or any of that kind of stuff. It was all outside of their experience. But they didn't judge me. They loved me. They prayed for me. They encouraged me. They treated me like everyone else. Anybody who, if you come out of serious addiction, there's a lot of challenges in that. One of the challenges is you don't really know how to live sober. You don't even know how to have a conversation sober. Yep. It's been years, right? So a lot of what they did for me is they modeled for me how to deal with conflict, how to have healthy conversations, how to grieve losses without addiction, without running to drugs, how to have real friends that centered around drugs and alcohol, right? Like all of that's what the model for me. And after that experience, I've always said, God saved my life, but he did it in church. And, the church is God's life-saving community. So that's really what put me on the road to being a pastor. I felt like all I really have wanted to do since then was share the grace of God that was shared with me and help other people find that same healing and hope in the faith community. And so that's what gets me up in the morning.
Man, I love that. Could
So
you maybe encourage somebody that might be online right now and maybe they're in the middle of an addiction, maybe they're just on the other side, but this whole situation right now isn't helping anything. And there's a lot of extra stress, and we know what that can do, and the anxiety and the pressure that we're feeling. What would you say to that person that maybe is on, or maybe they have someone in their family that they know is dealing with this? What would you say to them?
Yeah, I would say, first of all, let me just talk to my addict friends. As an addict, I don't define myself that way anymore, and I feel like I'm defined by the grace and love of Jesus Christ, as are you, the audience listening in, your church family. But I still have an addictive personality, and I still have the same addictive traits. They just come in different ways, more healthy ways. I'm not so healthy. They're about what it used to be about. The thing about an addict, I think, is one of the things that I'm the absolute best at, particularly when I was in my addiction, was deception. The person the absolute best at lying to was myself. I can lie to everybody else, but really, the issue with addiction is you lie to yourself again and again and again. And I think you might be free from that addiction, or you might still be in it. But the biggest mistake we can make is to lie to ourselves, to tell ourselves we're okay when we're not, to tell ourselves we're not going to go back, even if we don't have that much distance from it, and to sort of tough up and not reach out for help. So if you have you need to be talking to your sponsor on a daily basis, on a regular basis, just checking in. If everything's good, right? That's okay. But you're not lying to yourself about who you are and where you've been, and about the real threat that can hang over your life of falling back into something else in your life. Maybe it's not a sponsor. Maybe it's a group leader. Maybe it's a friend who's a person of faith. We need to be checking in on each other. And I've got a few people that check in on me, and then there are people that I check in on. And they're not always one-way relationships. It goes both ways. But if I'm sitting at home and I'm alone, and I'm social distancing from Lori because we've had an argument because we're under the same roof so much, or whatever, right? There are people I'm reaching out, and I never social distance.
Never.
I have no idea what that.
Nobody relates to that.
We're sorry.
Yeah, but I'm trying to lead myself well.
Yeah.
And acknowledge, you know what? I really wish somebody would call and check on me right now. Mm-hmm. But since nobody is, I'm going to pick the phone up and I'm going to text or reach out to somebody else.
That's
and
good.
Connect with them. And just that relationship, that connection. And when you connect with that person, it's okay to say, I'm facing real temptations right now, because the stress is tangible. It's in the air, and everybody's feeling it. It's okay to say, hey, I'm feeling things coming into my heart and life that maybe I haven't felt for years and years. To acknowledge it, and then to do what you did at first. Those of you that come from an addiction background and are clean, and that is surround yourself with great people who can offer you a different way of life, different perspective on life, and keep your knees and I'm a big believer in the 12 steps. So, for me, to keep working, go back to working the steps, even left them behind. But if the stress is ramping up and the season you're in, get the big book out, see, whatever it takes, right? Go back and do what you did at first if you're back in that kind of hot box season.
Vulnerable spot.
Yeah.
Man, that's great advice I know a lot of people in our church, and it applies. We always think of addiction, well, it's heroin or it's alcohol, but there are so many things where we can make idols in our life, and we prioritize that thing over the things of God.
Right.
And it's sometimes it's a slow slide. It doesn't happen wow, in this place. And it just gradually, we find ourselves in a place that we never thought we'd be, doing something we never thought we'd do. And we go like, where do I go?
Yeah.
And then the enemy gets in our head and we're dealing with guilt. And the enemy's telling you can never recover, or what if people knew? And what you said, I think, is so valuable. Like, you got to be honest with yourself. Linda and I always say, God can't heal what you won't reveal.
That's right.
And there's something powerful about confession and just saying something, so that you're not like buried under this guilt and shame of like, man, what if people knew, and what would they think? And I tell people, what they think is, wow, you're not that different than me. Like, we've all got stuff that we're unpacking.
So let me ask this question, because I'm thinking about this as we're talking about this. We're talking about being authentic and vulnerable and real and honest. So we see on Facebook that people are doing that. And where is the line? I'll ask you guys to speak into this. Where's the line between being authentic and vulnerable and real and honest? Where's that line to then on the other side? Because we can end up going down a road that will take us into depression, possibly into woe is me, feeling sorry for myself. Where's that line that we draw, that we say, you know what, we need to kind of get on the other side here. We can be authentic and real, but what's going to turn us to be able to, and Lori, you said it earlier, to be able to overcome some of these things that we're feeling? Because I believe we feel what we feel. We feel like these are legitimate. We can't deny our feelings. So how do we overcome those feelings to be able to manage these next 4, 5, 6, 7 weeks that we're going to be in quarantine?
Yeah, that's right. Well, the first thing that comes to my mind, and then I'm going to let you speak.
No, it's
here.
okay.
The first thing that comes to my mind is what I'm doing in my own life, and what we've been doing as a family is, feelings are good, right? Feelings are a gift from God. God gave us our feelings, and I don't know that they're necessarily bad feelings in and of themselves, right? But every feeling can go bad, right? It can go to a place that's further than God wants it to go. And so I've just been really focused on being honest with myself, and Lori and I have had a lot of moments where we've just sat down and talked about what we're feeling. But then, don't just let your feelings have the final say of the day. Don't just let the news have the final say of the day. You got to speak your faith over your feelings. You got to let your faith impact your feelings, and it will if you'll remind yourself of what God's promises are. You remind yourself of who God is and how far God has brought you. One of the things I've been thinking about is just when you're in a tough situation, just remember, one of the things out of the book of Lamentations fascinating to me is Jeremiah. There's this passage where he's in the midst of this horrible crisis and tragedy. City of Jerusalem's destroyed, the temple's teared down, it's bad, everything's horrible. It's a pretty hopeless book in a lot of ways. It's really difficult to even read. And chapter 3, he says, God, you've made me chew on gravel. You've rolled me in the dust. I can't remember what prosperity is. I mean, that's pretty bad. He says, everything I ever hoped for from the Lord is gone. I'm like, oh my gosh, this is the prophet saying all this. And right after he says all that, he stops and he says, I remember. He says, I remember hitting the bottom. He says, I remember the taste of ashes, the poison that I've swallowed. And remembering, I remember, and I keep a grip on hope.
Wow.
The Lord, he says, Lord's loyal love has not dried up.
Wow.
And that, so he remembers where he's been, how God has rescued him in the past, all God did in his darkest days. And then he applies it to today and says, the same God is still on the throne. He's still faithful. His promises are still true. He's still moving and working. And sometimes we just got to look in the mirror. And I've had a few of these kind of self-communication moments of just kind of looking at yourself saying, all right, Jud, what do you believe? You believe God is good. You believe he's true. You believe he's in charge. You believe he's got this. Yes. Then speak that to remind yourself of what the Bible actually says.
Wow.
That's really good. Lori, you were going to, I think.
Oh, go ahead, Lori. You have something?
All right.
No. I was just going to say, just some really thinking about what you asked, Linda, about just like practical weird people who was watching the coronavirus in December in China. I've been scarred by that Dustin Hoffman movie where it had the like pandemic that came from the monkey, whatever that was. It scarred me when I was in junior high. And so I've been kind of watching it as it kind of crept closer. And so as everything started to close down here and my spiritual feet kind of swept out from under me.
Let me just stop you. Lori is ordering canned goods in February, y'all. And I am like, what is happening?
Lori.
Lori, what am I supposed to do with all this stuff? You know, like Tylenol showing up and extra toilet.
Paper towels.
We'd have no toilet paper. We would have been totally unprepared. Anyway.
We haven't bought toilet paper yet. We haven't had to buy toilet paper. Linda had enough toilet paper here for the whole church.
We're not that far apart, my dear. We're not that far apart.
We're good with toilet paper.
As it got really, really close, I was like, I had to really quickly decide what I was going to let feed me and feed my mind.
Yeah.
I thought, like, I can't watch it in the news since December. But as soon as it was right here, I had to cut myself off from the news. I had to do it. And so I was like, I'm going to pay attention. I followed one news organization, not even an organization, one news gal in Texas.
You should tell them.
Her name, it's Smart Her News on Instagram. Everybody should totally follow her. But she literally once a day breaks down the day's COVID news in bullet points. It's not emotional. It's not scary. She just gives me the facts. And I couldn't take it. Like I needed to get that out of my mind. I started following like Good News Movement on Instagram. I started following this little Jesus-loving grandpa in England because he had a sweet British accent. And I needed like a warm fuzzy blanket and a grandpa to tell me it was going to be okay.
And she makes me watch these videos before we go to bed at night. And he's like, so I'm out here in my garden.
And you know, he just makes me happy. I'm like, I just need, like, I have to determine right now what I'm going to let fuel my mind.
Right.
Like I have to decide, and it's not going to be fear, and it's not going to be the news. And if people are going to be nasty on Facebook and Instagram, I'm going to mute them right now. I don't have time for that. My mind can't take that in. And so what I'm just going to give myself is the permission to fill my life with faith things, with good things, with positive things, with hopeful things. And that's what's going to allow me to reestablish my footing. And so give yourself permission to do that.
That's good.
Online and you know, you give yourself permission to take the news app off your phone or to turn off the local news and instead get filled up with the things of faith, but even just good things that are happening in the world. I think one of the most beautiful things in all of this is to see how people have just like the brightest of humanity has come out. We had a gal come through our food pantry line who had seen an elderly woman at the grocery store who was on like an oxygen tank. And she said, what are you doing at the grocery store? And she said, nobody in my family lives here. And she said, I did not know her name. I'm now your family and I'm going to take care of you. You don't leave your house anymore. And so they exchanged phone numbers. She sat 3.5 hours in line at our food pantry to get groceries for this woman she doesn't know. And that's the beautiful stuff that's happening out there. But if we only are reading the negative, nasty, whatever, it is going to drag us down. But if we find bright moments like that, it can really lift us up in this time too.
Yes. One of the things we've said to each other, and it's a great tagline to hang on to, which is feed your faith and you starve your fears.
Yeah.
Good.
You feed your fears and you starve your faith. Yeah. Right. So we got to decide, you know, what we're going to feed in our lives. So we've been really focused on that. A couple things that have been, just to be super practical, that have been helpful to me. You know, you got to keep, I don't know what your, how you deal with stress and how everybody has their own way of managing stress. But for me, exercise is important. Time with God is important every day. And I've found that you just have to know yourself. If I don't do those things first, the very first thing for me, there's a likelihood I won't. Now, if you're a night owl, that's a morning guy. Get up really early. But I've just gotten back to being crazy rigid about at 6 a.m., I make a cup of coffee. I read a psalm a day. That's what I do. That's my devotional time. Every day it's a psalm, and I just pray through it, read a little bit, pray, read a little bit, think about something, pray for our world, whatever. makes a huge difference. And then from 7 to about 8, I work out. So from 6 to 8, this was my pattern for a long time. And then I haven't done it for probably 6 months at the same rigidity. I would move my devotional time around, and it was easier to be faithful to that before all of this. But once all this happened, even though we're quarantined, it feels like there's just so much distraction.
Yeah.
So many things coming at us all the time, or just an inability to focus. So I've just gone back to like 6 a.m. I get up and I started, I've got this old bell system. I started doing squats again. It's been a long time since I did squats. I can hardly walk.
That's the most difficult thing in the world. I was doing this 4 minutes. It's only 4 minutes. Sounds like I ran a marathon. 4-minute intense fat belly burner workout. And it says, okay, let's go, men. We're doing the squats. And I'm like, I'm out. And I do squats and I'm like, oh my gosh. Anyhow, most
4 minutes
difficult,
out, he was like,
4 minutes. You thought, Linda's like, what's wrong with you? So I did the 4-minute intense fat belly burner workout, honey.
I could
Let's go. I think for me, I was waking up after the shutdown of everything, and I'd just be like, well, there's nothing, I'm not running out, like it's just another day. They start to get free, right? If you're not kind of out of your house and working.
Yeah.
So it's been really good to get back to that schedule of like, man, by 8 o'clock, I will have spent time with God and I will have worked out. Yeah. And then it sets the whole tone for my day differently,
Well, I think it needs to be said that it's okay if you don't get up at 6 a.m.
Yeah, no, good night, people.
I'm out on that. I'm not doing that. I don't even set my alarm before 8. See y'all.
Old school musician hours.
It's kind of whatever's working for you. The boundaries you need to put in, the routine you need to set into place. And really, I think what we're saying to people is find it. What is that thing? What is that thing that's good for you? What is that thing that will distract you? Is it watching The Little Englishman and right, the English family? Or is it working out? I mean, like we've got to figure that out, right?
Yeah.
Hey, one thing real quick. Okay. I just want to say, then we can wrap it up. Yeah. I was thinking about this when you were talking about Lamentations, Jud. I was reading today, and I think this is interesting. I think there's a correlation here. And I was thinking about King David and when he lost his son. And when he was going through the process when the son was sick, he wasn't eating. I mean, I can see, like, picture him. They said he looked a mess. It's like he wasn't shaving, wasn't eating, wasn't showering. And he's falling apart through this season. But then when it was over, his son passed away. He said, hey, it's time for me to put my act back together. He said, I need to get ready to go because there's still work to do. And I think it's important for us as churches to remember we still have work to do. And there's going to be a time we have to get it back together and go, because this isn't going to be forever. And there's more people to reach. And right now is the time. Listen, I know we're all sitting on our couches on Sunday morning and we haven't shaved and, we're hanging out. But when I read that scripture today, I was thinking, man, that applies, I believe, to the church, that there's going to be a time. So as we wrap it up, would you just kind of speak on that? Like, where do we go from here? If you would encourage our church, and we'll close it. And again, thank you guys so much. This has been unbelievable to talk to you guys all night. But where do we go from here? Like, let's just kind of wrap it up with that. If you could just speak into that.
Well, I think, as we face the coming weeks, we have a rare window. I would say that, let me just speak to that at a couple of levels. Spiritually, we have, and from a church standpoint, we have a rare window of opportunity.
Yes.
And there'll be a time to grieve all of this. I can tell you, for me, I grieve it in part when I'm in it, but I got to get everybody through it before I can fully grieve it, and that's probably how a lot of us feel towards our families and our loved ones and taking care of each other. That's what leaders do, right? Whether you're a leader at home, a leader in your business, a leader, right? Men and women, we rise up and we lead through it, and then we grieve it next March, like once we get everybody through it, that's part of it. But I would just say, like, we have a window of opportunity, and it may be very short. Our attention span in this country is very short. Right now, people are hurting enough that they're listening and their hearts are open. So this is the moment to invite friends, to help people come along with you to church, have a virtual a Bible study with some friends at work that you're not even meeting. Get on a call with people. Like, this is a moment where all of us can be deployed as missionaries, if you will, to bring hope to other people. And it's a rare window to do it for sure.
I keep telling people this is the time where the smallest touches are the biggest touches.
Wow.
Like, it doesn't have to be some grand, huge, big thing. The smallest things mean the most right now. How are you really doing text message? Like, don't tell me how you're doing. I mean, tell me how you're really doing. A text message like that in somebody's life to let them know, I don't just care for you about what you used to do for me, but actually care for you for who you are.
Yeah.
Like, those are the kind of moments.
Yeah.
Sending an actual card. Can you imagine like something showing up in the mailbox? That would be like an encouragement for somebody. A phone conversation. Like the little things right now are huge things in people's lives that can open up their hearts to the hope of Jesus. It's awesome.
Yeah, and then I think personally, it's actually a gift this season. What I mean by that is I know many of you are afraid and concerned about your business, the business future. I know many of you feel like your business just went off a cliff edge, like, and you aren't sure what it looks like coming back. I know many people have been furloughed and laid off, or are afraid they will be and aren't sure if they're going back kind of at the same level or in the same space. And so it's a brutal time, but the illusion of control that we've lived under in this country for the last many, many years has been pulled away.
That is so.
And now we realize, oh, wait, we're not in control. We never actually were in control, right? Only God is in control, and we're here to do his will. And the same God that was faithful to you in February will be faithful to you in May and April. The same God that put food on the table in February, hold him to his word. He's going to put food on the table in April and May. So let's hold him to his word, and let's live as his people, and let's walk without fear. The Bible says in Leviticus that God broke the yoke of slavery around our necks so that we could walk with our heads held high.
Amen.
And even though there's a lot of fear and a lot of heads down, our role is to walk with our heads held high. We're children of the King. King of Kings loves you. King of Kings died for you, right? And he's still on the throne. He didn't quit. He didn't resign. He's still moving and working. And, so what we don't have right now is we don't have clarity on how he's going to move and work. We don't have clarity on how he's going to put food on the table. We may not have clarity on how we're going to get a paycheck. But the truth was, all that in February was an illusion anyway.
Yeah.
We see, what we have right now is we have the King of Kings still in our corner, still moving and working. He is still going to show up. He's going to do it in ways that surprise you and me. I've lived through it before in Vegas, and we're going to go through it again. We're prepared. I mean, the strip shut down, y'all. So I'm not speaking from a place of comfort and hey, everything's good for me, but I'm sorry it's going to be bad for you. We're going to, all the studies say we're likely to be the most hit city in America.
Wow.
So we're going to get annihilated in all of this. You got to be able to get on a plane and go to a casino and sit down and sit in a venue to come to Vegas, right? So
right.
20-30% of our city has already filed for is unemployed, and then of those, over 300,000 just in our city have filed for unemployment claims, and they can't even get their claims processed. Wow. So we're serving in food lines. We've basically become a huge food bank to our city. We've served 2.1 million pounds of food in the last 5 weeks.
Good, man.
Wow.
So I'm like putting food in the backs of cars now, and I'm like, man, I didn't go to school for this, but at this point, it's like all hands on deck. We're all doing it, right?
Yeah.
So that's a picture from our world to encourage you in your world to say, I'm not defected from what's happening. I'm having conversations with business leaders every day, and I'm putting food in the back of cars of people who literally, until that government stimulus hits their bank account, they've been laid off 6 weeks ago, and they are living on a prayer now. And I'm saying to them, I'm saying to myself, same God who saw you through February is going to see you through April and May. He'll surprise you, and he will be true to his promises.
That is so good. Oh man, this is so good. And I'm telling you, the words that you guys have given us for our church and for everyone who's watching have been amazing, and we want to thank you guys for that.
Give the hearts up right now for Pastor. There should be hearts flying on there, man. We're so grateful.
Yeah, as we close up, I I would love for you to pray over us and just kind of a prayer declaration, so
Over
to
CV
speak.
Church. Yeah, that would be great
and,
if you could do that.
we want to just tell you how much we appreciate you both.
Thank you.
How honored we are that you were actually on our first Hope Night, and just how much we love you guys and your church and all that you're doing to change a city for Jesus and his kingdom.
Amen.
And we're just grateful for you. And we're grateful to have this partnership across the country with you guys. So if you
we're grateful. We're honored.
Yeah,
we got to be
absolutely.
the first people right here.
Now the good stuff, that's coming the next.
Yeah,
2
that's
days.
right. We're warming them up. We're getting, it just gets better for me. But
This was
we're
fantastic.
so grateful and just think so highly of you guys. Love your ministry. And, just the fact, Experience Church, your pastor, professional drummer who played drums behind Dave Brubeck. Listen, people, man, come on. That's next level, man, along with other forms of rock and roll and music you probably know. But that's epic. So, yeah.
That's awesome.
It's our honor. So thank you for having me.
Because this is musician talking. Jud's a great musician, plays jazz guitar. So next time we have you on, we're gonna have you bring the guitar on, and we'll have you play a couple.
And then
you bring
Linda
the
and I
drum.
gonna like be in the back room, like piecing out on that.
Yeah. People hear me a few minutes over.
I was a Scottish dancer. My dad played the bagpipes. I was a Scottish dancer. So Lori, I could teach you a few moves, and we could do the sword dance.
Wow.
I don't know how good it'll be, but that's a little fact about me.
That's amazing. I love it.
That's incredible.
Well,
All
listen,
right. Well, pray us out, okay?
Yeah.
Would you
Thank
do?
you.
Yeah, would
Thank
you do that?
God, thanks for your love for us. I thank you for the Experience Church family, and just pray that you'll continue to bless them. I thank you for Tim and Linda and their incredible leadership and amazing way you're using them. Pour your spirit out on them in this season, God. I pray that many, many people will come to know Christ through this ministry. I pray that many friends see other friends who they've prayed for or hoped for, lean into you. And such a great word Tim shared with us that we can sort of lean out or we can lean in. God, help us to all lean in. Help us to not just go through this season, but grow through it. Help us to become the people you've created us to be. Help us to learn the lessons that you want us to learn so that we can be all you desire for us to be as we go into the next season. And so I just pray you'll move in a huge way. Bring your hope, bring revival, bring it to all of the cities in the surrounding area, and work in a way that only you can, God. We trust you. We thank you for your word and your promises. We depend on your spirit every day. We give you praise and thanks in Christ's name. Amen.
Amen. Man, we received that. You guys are the best. Thank you again. Night number 1, nobody better than Pastors Jud and Lori from the Great Central Church. Tomorrow night, we've got Pastors Brian and Danielle Sanders. We got a doubleheader tomorrow night. Then Pastor Lonnie and Ruth Snell. Closing up Friday with Thursday, sorry, with the great one and only Ed Young. Lisa Young's going to be fantastic. So we hope this encouraged you tonight. Please share it with someone, and we'll see you guys back here tomorrow night for Hope Nights Day 2. God bless you guys, and we'll see you all then.